and welcome everybody. I'm your king, King Paul, first of his name, Lord of Nerdophyte, and this is the Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 1 review. Now, before I get started, understand I will be talking about spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, please stop listening, go watch the episode, and then please do come back and listen to my review. So as we start off, it's a throwback as opening scene as the forces are marching into Winterfell. And it goes back to when King Robert and his cavalcade, if you will, is coming into Winterfell. And it's just like this is like an homage to the fact that we're in the last stretch of this show that all of us have put in more than 10 years of dedication to over the years. And to see a finale, that was kind of like it set heavier on me than I thought it would have. That, we're coming to the end of this show. And like I said, I've invested all of 10 years. I've watched the seasons multiple times. And I've, waited patiently for, 18 months or however long it's been. I think it was like 595 days that we waited to get these last 6 episodes. And so I'm pumped. And then, it was kind of like, a little walk down memory lane. Remember watching the first episode and watching Arya in that helmet jumping on the wagon, trying to get a good view, and watching Bran up on the wall to get a better view. It just, it's a stark contrast of where it started and where they are now. And obviously with the biggest threat that they've ever faced looming to the north and quickly making its way to Winterfell, that this is where the last stand is going to be, whether they know it or not. And that was one of the things that kind of bothered me about this episode as they started off is, people are still operating in this mindset that, we're still squabbling for lands or battling for honor of houses, and it's, is none of that matters. And none of them seem to be able to get that through their head that, all this stuff that they have been used to worrying about and fighting over and losing lives over is of no consequence facing, this huge threat. And I mean, I don't even know if there's a word to describe the mountain of shit that is rolling downhill from the wall and coming toward them. And, then that first meeting where, and Bran, God love him, it was awkward. It's always awkward when because, he's changed. He's not Bran anymore, per se. He is the three-eyed raven, and he's got a lot going on in his dome. And to see Jon run up and kiss him and, just no emotion from Bran, and then Jon kind of notices right away that it's like, yo, there's something different. And then we see Jon introducing Daenerys to Sansa, and then, we saw in the trailers leading up that it wasn't going to be a warm welcome, that she was going to, look her up and down, give her the business, and then, have this attitude. And it started to really stick in my craw that, here we go. It's the same old bullshit. They're worrying about, Jon bending the knee and giving up being king in the north. And, and Jon, it just seems like, it's not only Jon, but Jon seems that he takes all of the flack as far as the decision he makes. And when he's making all of his decisions he makes, he's making it to save lives. And people are still, hooked on this whole fact that, he gave up he bent the knee to Daenerys and gave up his, title as king in the north. And I was just like, man, you guys don't have any idea. And, and it's like that now. I think why it sticks in my craw so much is that I kind of deal with that in like real life. I kind of, I see people who worry about trivial things and don't focus on the bigger picture or have a bigger understanding of what's coming. And Jon does. I mean, he fought twice. He's seen the devastation that the Night King can create and cause. And, you saw what he could do when he took down Viserys, when they were trying to bring that White Walker or zombie or whatever you want to call him to King's Landing to show Cersei that, like, shit is real. This is not training exercise. Shit is going down and it's coming. And if it gets past Winterfell, it's going to come for King's Landing. It's going to come from the south. And we need to squad up. We need to put our, issues aside at the moment and prepare for the biggest threat that any of them have seen. Nobody has seen a threat like this. They've all lived pretty, I guess, comfortable lives. If you don't mind the occasional, slaughtering and murdering and wars. I mean, they've all had a pretty content existence. But all that is up in the air now. It's all threatened. This Night King dude is no joke. He is rolling like 300,000 deep. He's got giants, and we still haven't seen the full force, the full capability of the army that he's bringing from the north. I mean, there's no telling. I mean, even in the books they talk about spiders, and we know they have 3 giants. Those things are not going to be no joke. Now he has a dragon. I mean, he's coming in hot, and to see people still kind of, focused on old shit, really drove me crazy. It was like I like to call John the king of I fucking told you so, because, if anybody is granted a like I told you so, it's going to be Jon Snow or Aegon Targaryen. So we move on. We'll get over the people reuniting and meeting for the first time in a long time. You got Jon and Bran into first, and Jon already gets the idea that Bran is a different guy. And it's funny too, because Bran does what Bran does and doesn't, sugarcoat anything. And he's like, we don't have time for this. He has one of your dragons. He broke the wall, and he's en route. He's coming in hot, and everybody, for me, I think everybody kind of knew. Everybody knows what's going on. You know what I mean? But I think Bran had to snap him back into reality, because, unless you see him, at the wall or outside of Winterfell, like you see in the trailers, I mean, I don't think they really have an idea of what's going on. And none of the forces know, none of the Dothraki, none of the Unsullied, none of, the other bannermen and their armies that joined, everybody at Winterfell. They just don't have an idea. Jon is the only one, and Samwell and, the Hound and all the 7 that went north to, bring back a zombie to show Cersei in King's Landing. And so, we knew this episode was going to be, and I wouldn't say a throwaway episode, but it was just a foundational episode. You had to get these things out of the way, because if I think it's going to go, the episodes are going to follow the way I think they are, it's just going to be hell on wheels for the next 2 or 3 episodes. By the end of this one, you already think, wow, the White Walkers are coming. So, I feel like episode 2, is going to be like half of kind of dealing with the fact that in the end, Jaime, shows up, and they're going to deal with that too. And it's kind of bullshit. I hope they don't spend an exorbitant amount of time dealing with Jaime, because look, Jaime's there. They need to look at that fact from the beginning and say, look, Jaime's here. He's bringing news that, anybody other than Tyrion, which I thought was funny with him and Sansa reuniting. She talked about how she used to think he was the cleverest man in, Westeros. And, he's falling for Cersei to tell him one thing and do the opposite. So, I guess my favorite, reunion had to be Arya and Jon. It kind of started off like it was going to be standoffish. Oh, God damn it. It was going to start being adversarial. I can't say standoff, but I can say adversarial. But then it quickly turns, to a loving, reunion between, brother and sister. And it was great. It hit me right in the feels. I'm not going to even lie. And then watching Arya and the Hound reunite, her and Gendry reunite. It was great. I think the Hound can take some, can take some responsibility or ownership in the kind of person that Arya turned into, because although he may have been a dick to her, He did teach her some valuable lessons that she took with her when she went to the many-faced god and, became a badass, turned into an assassin. But, I really hope that she survives. I mean, part of me thinks that she's not because, she's got a big bill to pay with the many-faced god, and I feel like it's going to come due, later, by the end of the season. But I still have a holdout that her and Gendry can hook up, and her king and lord and lady of the Riverlands, where Baratheon, where he's the rightful ruler of the lord anyway of the Riverlands. So I'm holding out that she survives, but I don't know, man. It just seems like she punched her ticket, when she kind of walked away from the many-faced god, and it's going to come due. Whether the many-faced god, Jaqen or whatever the hell that guy's name comes for her, or, she makes a move for the Night King and he drops her. I just don't see Arya making it out. And I guess the most emotional scene that came up was, and it led from a really emotional scene to a really profound scene, was Daenerys and Jorah, going in and meeting Samwell. And man, John Bradley, you have to give that guy credit. He really showed a gamut of emotions when he learned that. I mean, I don't think any of us was sad to see, Randall Tarley get barbecued, I mean, he was an asshole. He was an asshole to Sam, and he was an asshole to Gilly. And so to see that guy get Kentucky Fried, it didn't bother me that much. But I knew that watching, when Dickon stood with his father, and let me say this. I know there's going to be people who are giant fans of Game of Thrones, and, they're going to name their daughters Daenerys, or their sons Jon, or, and it's all going to be, little, them showing they're big fans of Game of Thrones. But I'm waiting for the poor bastard whose parents decide that they're going to go outside of the box and name their poor kid Dickon. So, future Dickon, if you ever find this podcast in the ashes of whatever's left in 30 years, I give you full permission to go kick your parents in the balls. I mean, you're really doing your kid a disservice if you're going to name him Dickon. That's a bad move. It's a bad move for you. It's a bad move for the kid. I mean, unless you live in some utopia where, a name's a name and nobody's going to make fun of it. But if we're still in the same society that we live in now, and you're going to drop that, anchor on your kid from the beginning, yeah, you deserve to get kicked in your balls when your kid turns 18. And after he runs down to the courthouse and, legally changes his name to Sean or Gary, whatever, instead of Dickon, he's going to come home and kick you right in the balls, and you deserve it. So, as we see, he was upset that his father was, he got deep fried. And then when he talked about his brother and you saw the look on Daenerys' face, which kind of starts to freak me out, because I think Daenerys, even though that she's on board with coming north and helping defend Winterfell, she still is caught up in this, everybody needs to bend the knee. I'm the queen. I'm the rightful queen. And, and she doesn't know that Jon is the rightful heir to, the Seven Kingdoms. And so when she tells, Samwell that, no, your brother, he got barbecued along with your daddy. And watching John Bradley go, and have that emotion where he's physically breaking down. Because you can assume that, Sam and his father didn't have it's obvious they didn't have a great relationship. But we never really knew the kind of relationship that Sam had with Dickon. But, brothers are different. Look at the relationship between Jaime and Tyrion. It's kind of like the same dynamic. I mean, one is doted on more than the other. But between the two of them, there's massive amounts of love there. And to watch, Samwell, physically start to break down, hearing that his brother got executed, it was hard. And and they were, it started out as this great moment of Jorah bringing Daenerys there to introduce her to the man that literally saved his life, and then to have that all, take a 180. You're talking about taking a hard left. It all went down, and so now, if you think Bran is a green seer and he kind of saw this coming, you see Samuel, coming out of the wherever he was and seeing, creepy Bran sitting in the courtyard. So he's like, what the hell are you doing out here? He goes, I'm waiting on an old friend. And little did we know that he's waiting on Jaime Lannister to show up. So he sends, he already knows what's going on. He probably already seen that Daenerys, is basically telling him that, his brother and his dad is dead. And it's gonna be some way with Sam. And now he has anger and sadness, and Bran just, said, well, this is the right time, and just directs him right toward Jon in the crypts to pretty much, drop the biggest bomb that we're going to see so far in season 8, and telling Jon that he's actually, Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name, protector, and all that jazz. And so now, and it wasn't just that he was explaining to him; he was doing it out of anger, because he was angry that the fact that Daenerys, the queen that Jon bent the knee to and gave up his title, executed his brother and father. Like I said, probably could have gave two shits about his father, but he loved his brother, and I believe that Dickon loved Sam as well. And so yeah, that was a harder pill for him to swallow. And so now you have this, anger and grief and sadness, and he's just like wanting to lash out at her. And obviously, Sam is not going to do anything physical, or he's not going to make any bold gestures, but he will, that gave him the courage, I guess, to run into the crypts and tell Jon Snow that he is actually the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah, and it surprised me that they dropped the Targaryen bomb early on, but I guess if this is a foundational episode and that it's all just going to be hell on wheels from here on out, I could see where they wanted to get all the housekeeping out of the way and say, hey, you're the rightful king, but it also is going to cause a rift between him and Daenerys, because now you're going to have people knowing that he is a king, maybe not the king of the north, but now the actual king of all kingdoms. But you also throw in the factor that, they're going to know that he's a Targaryen as well, but he's also half Stark. It's going to cause an interesting dynamic as far as everybody's concerned going further. But now, the biggest, craziest thing that happened on this episode was, Jon riding a dragon, which was crazy. People suspected, and, when they started showing the trailers and they were showing the dragons kind of like gliding through the canyons, everybody was like, well, they're just flying. And then people started to say that, it's going to be Daenerys and Jon flying dragons. And I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to come out with that earlier. But then again, now in hindsight, I think, well, this is the house cleaning episode. This is where they get everything out. And so if Jon has to jump on the dragon later in the series during any kind of battles, it's, it's not like it's going to be a super shock, because he has ridden before. And now you see him and Daenerys, flying around on the dragons. And what does that say to everybody on the ground that sees Jon on a dragon? Yeah. So there's going to be interesting fallout from even that too. You already had the fact that he's going to be a Targaryen, the rightful king, and then he's riding a dragon. So we'll see how that goes, because, like I said, people are still operating under the same rules before, where they're squabbling over petty things. And, so are they going to, when they should be not giving a crap who's in charge or who's who or what's doing what, but the fact that they all need to band together to fight the biggest battle of their lives. It was funny too, because, Jon kind of gets the hang of it, I guess, at the end. And, brings, I always forget, I know Daenerys rides Drogon. I think it's Rhaegal? Yeah, Rhaegal. Jon's riding Rhaegal, which is, I guess named after, his father. So he lands the dragon, and it's that beautiful spot. And, it was hilarious watching Drogon just straight up meme Jon, You like, I will turn you into a matchstick, yo. You better be good to my mama, or I will, deep fry your ass. And it was a good scene. It was funny to watch, watching, can you imagine what it's like to get mean mugged by a dragon, just straight up, staring a hole right through you. Yeah, I mean, this episode was mostly just, kind of getting everything out of the way. I would have thought that maybe some things would have been later on in the episode, but I guess they're setting it up that the following episodes, at least the next three, I would imagine, are going to just be fighting, balls to the wall, fight for your life wars that are going to happen. And, maybe the last two episodes, are going to wind up kind of maybe sewing everything together. Because the last two episodes, I think, are 80 minutes apart or 80 minutes apiece. And so you have an hour and 20 minutes on both of those episodes to kind of sew everything up as they come to the conclusion of the episode. So yeah, we had a lot of big things going on. We had, Samuel finding out that Daenerys torched his pa and his brother. You had, all the reunions that we all were waiting for. Some were, what we wanted, some lacked. And then, like I said, then you have Sansa and, Jon. And it's, it's just, I guess that was the one thing that stuck with me the most in this episode was, people are still, with jealous or just still holding on to this, this original construct of, how they should feel about things and houses and lands and forces and people, getting upset over decisions that Jon has made. And, Tyrion, to his credit, came to his defense, but I don't think that held much water for anybody in that room. So, I mean, it's going to literally take, the White Walkers bearing down and watching the dragons do work and burning these fools up in order for them to say, well maybe Jon maybe did do the right decision. Well, yeah, it's kind of obvious. So I'm excited. Season 2, we had Jaime show up at the end. We had the little standoff between Jaime and Bran. And you can see from the, next on Game of Thrones that they're going to be dealing with Jaime. And, and I hope they don't spend a lot of time on it because it would really be kind of a waste of time. A waste of, they're only giving us 6 episodes. And, like I said, first episode's house cleaning. Second episode, don't spend a lot of time on it, 10, 15 minutes. And then we know that the Night King is coming. Because obviously at the last scene, you see my man Tormund and Dondarrion, which, if I ever come back, if there is reincarnation, I want to come back with that velvety chocolate voice of Beric Dondarrion. I mean, that guy could read the phone book and it would put me to sleep. But you have him, Tormund, they hook up with Dolorous Edd. And they're in that Heart Heath or whatever that place is. So, it's like the last pit stop before you go to Winterfell. And they see the Umber Boy, who they sent earlier on in the episode to rally, what personnel that they had left at their castle to bring to Winterfell to, mount this defense. And you see that poor bastard hanging on the wall. And, it got me too because, you just see a kid on the wall and you're kind of like tripping out. And then that fool comes alive and Dondarrion puts that flaming sword in him and he burns up and it turns into an art and crafts project with the legs and everything kind of spiraling out. And so, now they're on a hard course to Winterfell to tell them like, look, shit is getting real. We need to squad up. We need to get ready because the threat is imminent. So yeah, I'm excited for the next episode. Like I said, I hope they don't spend an absorbent amount of time dealing with the fact that Jaime showed up and what all that he's guilty of. I mean, everyone is guilty of something, and maybe they need spend a little time on it to get maybe some closure or some clarification. But then they need to move on and understand what's barreling down on them. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'm gonna keep doing these. Game of Thrones episode review. I think next time I'm gonna have my man Morgan in here. This time was rolling solo. I wanted to do a quick one because I wanted to get something out there. We're doing some equipment upgrades here at the Nerdified Podcast. I appreciate all the people that have listened and subscribed and liked the page. Stay tuned. We're upgrading, trying to give you a better podcast product. And, remember to follow us at Nerdified on Twitter, at NERDAPHYTE, at the Nerdified Podcast on Facebook. Go in there and drop a like. Leave comments, give us suggestions. Same thing on YouTube, Nerdified Podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell for the notifications so you know when new videos go up. And, you can listen to us on SoundCloud at Nerdified Podcast. I really appreciate the support that I've gotten from the beginning. Starting small like everything does, but we hope to do bigger and better things coming on. So thank you again. Stay tuned.